Good evening, everybody. You guys all hear me okay? Not too loud, not yelling at you? Are we good? Okay, well, how many of you have heard of the Master Gardener program? Trish, you can't raise your hand because you're in the program. Before tonight's meeting. Okay, well, just as a brief background for the 3 or so of you that aren't maybe familiar with the program, how many of you guys here pay a garbage bill? A fee of some kind? Perfect. Well, thank you for supporting the Master Gardener program. Whether you knew it or not, part of your sanitation fee through Public Works Solid Waste Department goes into an assembly bill, AB 939, which in return funds the San Joaquin County Master Gardener program. It funds many other positions and programs as well in the county related to green waste reduction and solid waste, but we're fortunate with the University of California to have this program here in San Joaquin County, as well as our environmental horticulture advisor, who's also funded via AB 939. And we both have the same messages and the same educational outreach goals to educate people on sustainable gardening practices and green waste reduction is always a key topic that we like to talk about. But water issues and pest issues are always on our agenda as well. Her clientele would be the professional landscapers, school maintenance people, golf courses, nurseries, and things like that. So we have different audiences, but the same message that we're trying to get out. And just so you guys know, if you ever have a gardening question, we do have an office and there are business cards in the back. You can call the Master Gardeners. There's volunteers that staff the office Monday through Thursday in the morning, and you can email pictures, you can call us, you can drop samples off, and we're here to help answer gardening questions that you may have that you're stumped on, that you want to know, can you send me some drought-tolerant plants? What's this bug eating my tomatoes? All sorts of things that we cover. So tonight I was asked to come speak on ways to conserve water in the landscape, and this by no means is a complete list of everything that you could do to conserve water. These are some things that we felt were possibly easy to go home and start doing tonight, and it's ironic that we're talking about a water conservation workshop and it's raining. What are the odds of that happening? But we are definitely in a drought, and there are things that we can do without ripping out our front lawn, without taking drastic measures of maybe switching out a whole irrigation system. This just might not be economically or physically feasible right now, but there's other little things that you can do that we're going to talk about tonight that will definitely help conserve water in the landscape. I have to let me put my glasses on, that way I can read one of these TVs. Or no, oh. That one's a little light. I have my glasses on and I can see. Read that. Perfect. Okay, sorry about that. So it's no secret we're in another year of a drought. Which one can I read these numbers on? So how many of you are familiar with the regulations and the ordinances that have passed and where Ripon is in relation to those regulations and measures that we need to meet as a community? As a state, the state was called to meet a 25% reduction, and that fluctuates from city to city within the state of California depending on your water usage. Here's some statistics, and I won't read them all to you, but Californians need to save at least 40 gallons per person every day, and that's from the California Urban Water Conservation Council, to meet the 25% reduction that the governor has called for. And Ripon, unfortunately, is a little bit higher than that. So you guys are going to have to save a little bit more than 40 gallons of water per person every day. EPA estimates that 30% of water is used outdoors in the U.S. California is actually close to 60% of water that is used in outdoor landscapes, watering, fountains, things like that. So our emergency conservation, have you guys all seen this, that we're not to use hoses to wash the car without a shutoff nozzle? Now that there's measurable rain, there's no watering or irrigating 48 hours after a measurable amount of rain. And these are all state ordinances. Fountains, if you have any type of fountains or anything that circulates water, it needs to recycle the water Or you can turn your fountain into something like a succulent fountain, and just get rid of the water altogether. And let's see, I think I just ran through all those. No washing off your sidewalks and things like that. So Ripon, you guys are actually in the tier 9, which is the last tier and the highest percentage that you need to conserve. So you're at a 36% reduction, which is not probably new news to anybody. And I just copied these points off of your guys' website of your watering days and times, and so you can find this information on your Public Works and Council website, which is where I found it. So let's jump to, we can see these 2004, 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I actually like the graphic that's coming up next that shows, and this is where we're at now, 2015. So we can see the water, snow to water ratio. But this is the one, just keep your eye, this is the same shot, same day or within a day or two. This is 2011, 2012, 2013, 14, and just this last March. So obviously we need to all make our efforts to conserve water. And it's not just a one-man band, it's a group effort that we're gonna have to do as a state and as a whole community. So let's talk about some tips and things that you can do. There's 15 tips, and within each tip I'm going to elaborate a little bit. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask, and if I can answer them, I definitely will do that. So prioritize your plants. If you go out now and you're trying to figure out what to water, put them in an order of what has been established the longest. So things like landscape trees, maybe what costs you a lot of money. And so we don't want to lose the large tree that's providing shade to your house. So that would be level 1. Level 2 would be the high priority. Level 2, and this is just talking about watering trees and the benefits of trees. Level 2 would be edibles, maybe like your vegetable garden, shrubs, things that maybe aren't as high water users as trees, but still cost you a little bit of money, are still established, still have a significant root system. They might bring, food for animals, for birds, things like that. Let's see what else. Fruit and nut trees would be a medium priority. So again, things that are producing something that you can use in the end. That would be a medium to high priority. When we're talking about fruit trees, we want to keep fruit trees alive, obviously, so that you have a crop this summer, depending on what crop it is that you're growing. There's some statistics or some numbers here. Peaches, plums, and nectarines really need adequate, substantial irrigation the final 4 to 6 weeks before harvest. So they're okay right now of not being watered heavily on a regular basis. But once you're getting close, that last month and a half, you really need to give them water to get that fruit to ripen up and to, size up to where you want it. If there's no or little irrigation water, you can keep your trees alive so you don't have to completely let them die off by doing some severe pruning. But that can take a couple of years to recuperate from if you're doing severe pruning and cutting back those scaffolding branches. But what that does is conserves water and focuses the water in the trunk and the root zone area, and we're not worrying about providing water to the top canopy part of the tree. So citrus needs a little more water than some of those stone fruits that we just mentioned. And summer and fall, they need a steady amount of water. And so if we fluctuate with citrus and irrigating, we tend to get some problems with fruit drop, with mushy fruit. And so citrus might be one of those. If you have a young citrus tree, you have to think about this way out. Is it worth the amount of water that it's going to take to keep a young citrus tree alive, or is it something to maybe pursue down the road and start over growing a citrus tree of some kind if that's what you have? So edible garden tips. Many of you may have already planted your vegetable gardens. Vegetable gardens typically are in the ground by now, your tomatoes and cucumbers and things. But if you haven't, or something to keep in mind even for your fall garden, is plant a vegetable garden that is adequate for your family. So I was guilty of this about 8 years ago. There's 2 of us, and I planted 12 zucchini plants, which I was out of my mind. There's no reason in any sane person's mind to plant that many zucchini. You get enough zucchini from 2 plants, maybe even 1 plant, but let alone 12. My neighbors and family weren't fond of me by the end of summer. They had so much zucchini. But plant enough for your family and don't overplant, because that's just more that you're watering and more that you're having to tend to. If you plant in blocks, so in squares rather than rows with furrows, you'll conserve more water. You'll have a denser planting, less weed competition that steals water from your plants, and it helps the soil to retain moisture. Add compost to your soil, organic matter, and we'll talk more about this later, but organic matter helps to retain water as well when you're growing edibles. Again, I mentioned weeds, so get rid of the weeds, hand pull them, hoe them, get them out of there so that they're not stealing valuable water that your edible plants are not getting. And water slowly. That's the thing. A lot of people will go out and I need to water my tomatoes because they're wilting and they're droopy because it's 105 here and I forgot to water them yesterday. And they go out and, faster is better, and they do this quick water that there's standing water puddling, and a lot of that standing water might evaporate. If the wind picks up, the wind can dry the soil out. So water slow. If you can use soaker hoses, or if you do have a drip irrigation system, that's fantastic. But if you're using a hose, that's also fine. Just water slow, and that will get the water down to the root zone with less evaporation occurring. So water on vegetables is crucial the first few weeks in getting your plants established. Tomatoes, we've got master gardeners that water their tomatoes once a week during the month of July. And you can train your plants to not need watering every day or every other day. You just need to be consistent with what you do and not water 4 days one week, which technically you're not supposed to do anyway, and then only 2 days the next week. Then we start seeing physiological problems with your tomatoes or zucchini if we have this roller coaster watering schedule. Let's see, I think that's just more. You guys have all this information, so I don't want to read all of this to you. And again, things like zucchini once or twice a week on your watering. So low priority plants would be your annual flowers, any herbs, ornamental grasses, and established turf. And the reason why newly planted turf was in the medium category is it doesn't have the root zone, the root structure that an established turf would have, and might not be able to bounce back as easy if you cut the water off to it. So it's, and it depends on the type of grass also. I have the luxury of having Bermuda grass, which any other time I would hate, but I have yet to turn on my front lawn sprinklers, and I still have a green lawn in the front yard and the backyard, just because it is resilient. It doesn't take a lot of maintenance, and even if it does turn brown, a rain like today will green it right back up practically overnight. And so established turf may look like it's dead, but oftentimes it'll just go dormant, and some proper fertilization and irrigation can bring that turf back to life once we have more water available to us. So second thing that you can do is you can use mulch. And how many of you guys are already using mulch in your landscape? Perfect, that's good. So minimum of 3 inches is what we recommend when applying mulch, and you want to spread that around the base of your plants, but keep it away maybe 4 or so inches from the trunk of your trees or shrubs, so that you're not getting any type of crown rot or root rots where the trunk is consistently staying moist. We want the ground around the tree to dry out just a little bit. But mulch can definitely help, 1, suppress weeds, and 2, keep soil temperatures down, and 3, conserve water. So rocks and gravel heat the soil, so that is a type of mulch, but not one that we would recommend during a drought, because it does get hotter and it does dry out the soil more, or can cook plants if you have rocks around. Plants, we're trying to conserve water, and that rock or stones acts almost like a brick oven type, where the sun heats off of it and it just bakes the plants around it. So we're definitely looking at wood is one of the better mulches to use during a drought. Rubber can also get hot. when you're using rubber mulch in the landscape. And bees are always a popular topic, and I know it's not water related, but we don't want to cover all of the ground in mulch because there are some native California bees that are ground dwellers and that like the soil and need the soil to dig their holes and burrow in. So we want to make sure that we do have some bare spots for the native bees. And you may think that you don't have them, but I bet if you go out and just spend some time in your garden looking patiently, you'll see these little bees that look like they're darting into your lawn or darting into the soil, and they just kind of disappear in the flower bed, and those are ground-dwelling native bees. So make sure we leave some bare soil for the native wildlife. So the third tip is, I talked about prioritizing your plants. Really think hard about purchasing any new plants, period. It's not something that we're recommending to do right now. It's any plant that you plant is going to require water to become established. A California native, a drought tolerant, something that's labeled as drought tolerant, low water using. It's fine and dandy, and it will be a low water using plant once it's established, but it takes regular watering for that plant to become established. So you might be better off with your existing landscape that can handle a lack of water or a cutback of in watering, rather than ripping out those plants to go put in drought tolerant, low water using California native plants. If you are looking at redesigning your landscape, do it in the fall. Natives are great to plant in the fall. They have winter rains and cooler temperatures, as long as we have the winter rains, to become established, and then come springtime, we're not having to water them as much. But summer, the warmer weather is definitely not the prime time to be planting any type of new plants. And just remember that we are in USDA Zone 9 and Sunset Plant Zone 14. So if you are purchasing plants, do a little research to make sure that you are purchasing plants that are correct for this zone to plant in. And the nurseries are usually pretty good about only providing plants that grow well here, but you never know. So if you are curious, well, how do I know if this plant's a low water user or not? There are some very user-friendly websites, and I actually have some screenshots of them. The University of California came up with, the acronym is WULCOS. Don't ask me at this moment what the acronym stands for, but it's a significant amount of research went into plant water needs using the CIMMYS weather stations, lots of analysis, data crunching. And then the WaterWonk one uses the same WULCOS database, but includes pictures. So let's take a look. You can, this is the first one, the first web address. And again, you have these written down on your sheet. You can go in, and if you know the name, great. It'll tell you the information about that plant. But if you don't know, you can go in, and I checked perennial, and I checked very low and low. And then I hit search. And these are my search results. There were 229. And I should back up. The screen prior to this is going to ask where I live. So you pick Central Valley, and then from that list, it gives you alphabetically. I pick Stockton. That's where I'm at. So it knows I'm in Stockton. It knows my zone. And here are 229 plants that are low water or very low perennial plants that would grow well here in the valley. Now the WaterWonk has the same. You can see perennial, low water, very low. Here's my database that I got. The WaterWonk one, you can actually save plants to print. So, oh, I like this plant. You can check it off and build a plant list. And then WaterWonk also includes pictures of the plants. So great. You have, a name of a plant. You have no idea what it looks like. And they're all linked to Flickr accounts, so you can see them in different seasons. This is the fern leaf yarrow, which is one of the options that came up. The leaves, how tall it gets, what it looks like in the fall, different. So you can decide if that's the right color palette that you're looking for, the right texture, things like that. And if it is, you check it and you can add it to your print list. And if not, you go back and continue searching. So there's two really useful and easy to use resources if you are looking to purchase new plants. If you are looking to, and we'll talk more about this at the next workshop, but if you are looking to replant, try hydrozoning. So if you have very low water users, clump those together. If you have medium water users, put those together so that you're not overwatering the low water users or underwatering the heavier water users. And that actually will help conserve water if you have them hydrozone for plants that require the same amount of water. And again, like I said, plant in the fall, or fall is ideal, plant in the spring when the weather's cooler and we're allowing plants time to get established before the summer heat has arrived. Know your soil type. How many of you guys know what type of soil you have? What does Ripon have here? Are we alone? Are we a little bit of everything? A hodgepodge of just depends on where you live? So what do you have? What type of soil do you know? Does it look like Play-Doh, or is it like the beach, or in between? So probably like a loam, a combination, a sandy loam. Anybody have anything different than a sandy loam? Okay. Trish, what do you have? Okay. 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 Well, knowing what type of soil you have, why would that be important in conserving water? But it all relates back to how you water your plants. And so this is just a brief few slides on soil texture. Sandy soil holds the least amount of water. Clay soil holds the most amount of water. And that loam, which is the ideal combination of sand and clay, is ideal. It's very hard to get, but that's what we're looking to get. I have clay soil. I can walk out in my garden, and by the time I'm done walking, if it's raining, I'm 4 inches taller than I was when I left the house, because the mud just cakes on like adobe clay. So let me jump back to this one. So again, just to reiterate, if you have a sandy soil and you irrigate your plants with high water pressure very fast and quickly, that water is going to just go right through the sand soil, past the root zone, and most of the water that you put on is useless to the plants. Versus if you do a slow water, or even if you cycle the water, so you water for 10 minutes and then turn it off, and then maybe an hour later turn the water back on for another 10 minutes. And that allows the water to be absorbed by the plant roots before it just seeps through the sandy soil. For those of you that had the sandy soil here. So adding organic matter, a cubic foot of soil holds roughly 1.5 quarts of water for each 1% of organic matter. So or compost, if you have, leaving dry leaves can even help retain soil moisture. So if you can incorporate dry leaves back into the soil instead of just raking everything up. A lot of times we think we have to get rid of it to make it look pretty, to look nice, but it's really helping to conserve water. If you can make your own compost, that's even better, because you're reducing the amount of green waste that you're throwing away to the landfills. And you can, scrap your banana peels and watermelon rinds, and your newspaper's compostable, the bill envelopes, all kinds of things you can throw in the compost pile. And then you can provide this to your garden and soil for free. You wouldn't have to go out and buy it. So composting is definitely a positive in many ways, but in helping to retain water in the soil. So water smart. What time of days do you guys irrigate? Who irrigates at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Fantastic. I didn't want to see a hand go up. I would give you guys all raffle tickets, but you all have one. So irrigating, depending on what you're irrigating, I know it's hard to go out and maybe irrigate your potted plants at 10 o'clock at night, but think cooler weather is the best time to irrigate. So first thing in the morning, maybe go out and water the patio plants so that we're not out, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 6 o'clock when you're getting home from work and it's hot and the soil is just going to suck up that moisture. As I keep hitting the button. And again, just reiterating, water deeper, water slower. So that's for anything. Don't just, throw some water on it and think you're good. You're better off letting it slowly trickle into the ground. Let's see. So overwatering established plants is one of the biggest problems that we see in our Master Gardener office with plant problems, plant diseases, plants dying. People usually think I'm not watering enough, so they water more. And that's usually again, I said you could train plants to not require as much water. And so water slow to promote healthy root growth. The slower you water as well, the deeper the roots are going to go. So that works for turf, that works for your ornamental plants, your edibles. If you water fast, you're going to have very shallow roots. Landscape trees, fruit trees. If you're watering slow, that water's slowly penetrating into the ground, your roots are going to go deeper to go get that water as it absorbs into the ground. Use drip irrigation if you can. How many of you guys by chance have some type of drip irrigation already? Okay, for some it's overwhelming, the thought of switching over, converting a pre-existing irrigation system to a drip, but there's many helpful how-to guides. If you're comfortable using the internet, there's lots of how-to videos of switching over pre-existing irrigation controllers and timers and systems to drip irrigation. And many systems, it's almost just like playing with blocks or Legos where you just snap pieces together and punch a few holes and make the design out in your garden, and for the most part, you're good to go. It's not as daunting of a task as many people are afraid of. So our Master Gardener webpage, which we have business cards in the back that has the address, we have a whole page dedicated to water conservation in the home landscape, but a subpage of our water conservation page is all on irrigation in the landscape specifically. And then you click on that and you can go into drip irrigation. And so we have lots of those resources that I was talking about right here in one easy spot to find how-to videos, how-to guides, depending on if you know you have a Rainbird system or Toro, or depending on what you already have. They've provided lots of information. The university has some books on drip irrigation and some other handouts, publications that you could read that might be helpful in aiding you in converting your landscape over to drip. So as much as 50% of the water that we use outdoors is wasted. And we were just talking about, before we started tonight, sprinklers in housing developments watering the street. You know, that's an urban drool waste of water that I'll talk about here in a little bit. But again, just try to keep in mind, and it's a mindset that's soon going to be connected to a monetary value as people start receiving fees and fines for using too much water. But try to be conscious of what you're watering, how often, how much before you go out to water, and have a game plan set of, again, you know, going through some of these topics that we've already talked about, prioritizing your plants, what time of day you're watering, and hopefully we can all cut back on this 50% waste that is currently taking place. So turf tips, you know, many people are on this side of the fence of I want to get rid of my turf completely, and the other half seem to really enjoy their turf and they want to keep it lush and green and have that healthy looking lawn. So a healthy looking lawn is not necessarily all just connected to how much you water it. Mowing comes into play of having a healthy lawn, and a healthy lawn will use less water. It will have less weeds, it will look healthier, it won't have as many diseases. And something to think about, you guys can all make this sign. This lawn isn't dead, it's just sleeping. But maybe if you are going to take out turf in areas that it doesn't serve a purpose. So if you have kids or grandkids, I wouldn't remove all of my turf because I have 3 kids under the age of 5. They use the lawn to play soccer on and to run around and play hide and seek and tag. But I might not need all of my lawn. So I could take out, ask yourself, can I take out some of it, part of it, half of it? And convert it to some hardscaping or low water use plants, you know, things like that. Have a plan, but really think about what are you using your yard for. If you have pets, you don't want to remove all of your turf necessarily, because that would not be fun. And be willing to accept less than a perfect lawn. My lawn is green. Is it the softest to walk on barefoot right now? No. We don't go run around barefoot on the lawn because it isn't as lush as I'd like it to be, but it's still green and it hasn't been watered yet once this year by our sprinklers. So again, this just talks more about replacing your turf with ground covers or other water appropriate plants. This house here, and this pointer's working sometimes. No lawn, lots of hardscaping. Hardscaping are your walkways, your pavers, stones, riverbed rock, things like that, decomposed granite, and then native grasses, native plants, ornamental grasses. And this uses a lot less water than a front yard full of turf would use, and it looks very nice. So the best times to water your turf, you could actually argue 10 o'clock at night, just like watering other plants, but 2 in the morning until 8. And that's really the best time for water pressure. Usually there's the least amount of wind for evaporation purposes and actually getting the water on the target spot that you're trying to actually irrigate. And evaporation just from the heat. If we water from 2 to 8, we're less likely to get lawn diseases because eventually soon after we stop irrigating, the sun's going to come up, it's going to dry our turf out, and we're not going to have wet turf sitting all night. Many people will go out and water their lawns at 8 o'clock at night, which is not horrible, but you do have a greater risk of getting certain turf diseases because that turf is sitting damp and wet. And if the outside temperatures drop to a certain temperature, you can get some different molds and funguses that might grow on top of the turf. And adjust your irrigation schedule monthly. How many of you guys go out and look at your timers, your irrigation timers? Or how many of you just set it and leave it? That's a lot of people do that. And we were actually, again, talking before this workshop started on, new homes that go in. The landscape designers set the irrigation timers to establishment cycles, which is very frequent watering, multiple times a day. And a homeowner comes in and buys the house and has no clue or doesn't even think about going to the irrigation controller to change it, 2 years after they've been living there. It's still watering multiple times a day on an establishment cycle. And so knowing your irrigation system and going in and changing it, and if you set yourself monthly, if you miss a month here and there, it's not the end of the world. But definitely go out and change with the seasons, with the weather, with the temperatures. So avoid runoff and puddling. We like to call that urban drool. So we're watering the sidewalks and the streets. Irrigate, so your lawn, for example, and you obviously would have to do this during the day to see what's happening, but go out and do a maintenance check. Are any of your sprinklers broken? Are they stuck? Are they, do you need some adjustments? Do you need to clear out around your sprinklers? Do you have grass growing around that's prohibiting the water from actually getting out and irrigating the lawn? So do that during the day so you can see what's happening, but also go out and irrigate your lawn until the first signs of puddling, and you need to time this, occur. And then turn the sprinklers off and wait to see how long it takes for that water to absorb back into the soil. And then you've got a cycle that you can set your irrigation timers to. Maybe it might be 10 minutes, maybe it's 20 minutes, maybe it's 5 minutes and you're already puddling. If you have that 4-inch hard pan, 4 inches down, it's not going to take very long for that water to start puddling because it has nowhere else to go. And if you run your irrigation multiple times in these cycles, you'll have a healthier lawn instead of just irrigating the sidewalk and having water run down the drain. Oh, there's the urban drool. And it could be, again, from sprinklers that are broken and not functioning correctly, could also play into this urban drool. So mowing your lawn, it took a while to train my husband to do this, but really the proper way to mow your lawn is to mow the top third of the grass, and that is it. So say you're gone on vacation, you come home, and you could bale your front lawn. It's grown that tall, and you just want to go out and mow it real short to get it nice and cleaned up and get rid of the clippings. You really want to take a third at a time. So if you have to mow it multiple times, that's just what you're going to have to go out and do. But a third of the grass at a time is the healthy way to mow the lawn. And it actually will help retain moisture, keep the weeds out, and promotes deeper root growth. And again, if you have deeper roots, not these shallow surface roots, they'll be able to pull up naturally occurring moisture that perhaps may be in the soil. Grass cycling. Does anybody here grass cycle? You guys know what that is? So take the bag off your mower, and if you have a mulching mower, it's even better. But grass cycling is where we're leaving the lawn clippings on the grass. And again, it doesn't work if you've been gone, and if it looks like you could come through with a baler and make alfalfa hay bales, on your lawn. That's not grass cycling. We don't want this yellowing cover on your turf. But grass cycling are little tiny pieces of grass clippings that eventually will decompose, so they're adding nitrogen back to the soil, and they help retain moisture in your soil. So it's a win-win, and it's less that you're having to pay somebody to haul off to the landfill. So the rule is the top third for mowing. And aerating. If you haven't aerated your lawn, maybe now it's time to think about doing that. Aerating provides more water, deeper water penetration, and it's just not something that you have to do every season, but if you have a well-established lawn, you might want to look at doing this. This is there's different types of aerators. There's mechanical ones that typically you can rent from tool supply places, United Tool Rental, or depending on places down this way. I'm not familiar with exactly who rents tools down here, but you can rent them, or you can buy one like this where you just walk through and aerate your soil by pushing in with your foot, and it pulls out these soil plugs that again will eventually decompose back into the soil. You want to wait a little while to mow your lawn after you've aerated, because those plugs can be very dulling to your mower blades, or maybe borrow your neighbor's lawnmower. That could be. So the university has a fantastic website on their IPM, which is Integrated Pest Management website, and you can find it via our website as well. But say you don't know what type of turf you have. You can go in and they have turf keys where you can look at your grass. You can walk through this turf key and it'll ask you yes or no questions. Does it look square? Does it look spherical? Does it split? Does it have this? And it'll help you ID your turf, which also comes into play of watering and fertilizing depending on the type of turf you have. The Healthy Lawns website will give watering suggestions, so you can put in the size of your lawn and it'll tell you how often that type of turf, so again you need to know the type of turf that you have, but how much water that turf needs. Same with fertilizers. So a lot of people don't know how much fertilizer to apply to their lawn when they do fertilize. And this website has calculators that you just punch in some numbers, punch in the species of grass, and it'll give you how many pounds of nitrogen you need to add throughout the year, not necessarily all in one application, but at multiple times. And gets more into dethatching and aerating and more information than I talked about tonight. So get to know your irrigation controller. Your system, even though you might have an irrigation system, can waste more water, just like we talked about, if it's watering every day, multiple times a day, or at night, and you have no idea what's going on. So get to know your system. And if you think back to the slide where I showed you of our website, every irrigation controller right now, you can find a manual online. So maybe you have no idea where your manual is at. If you just search the type and the model number, you will be able to find the instructions to print or to save to your computer on how to operate your irrigation controller. And we talked about this earlier, but inspecting your systems, adjusting your sprinkler heads. I just jumped ahead when I talked about it. Installing a rain shutoff valve. So we have this out in our demo landscape at the Ag Center where maybe our irrigation controllers were set to water today, but this irrigation sensor, rain sensor, is going to detect that it rained today, so it's going to trip or overpower our controllers, and the sprinklers will not come on out in our demo garden because of this rain sensor. So that might be something that you want to consider installing to help conserve water in your landscape. And then there are many smart controllers. So, depending on how much money you want to spend, if you don't already have one of these, you can program from your cell phone. You can turn your sprinklers on and off from inside the house, in Cancun, all over the place, just depending on what you're doing. And you can actually get data reports of how much water your system's using and wasting, possibly. Change the batteries. How many of you guys think about changing the batteries in your irrigation controllers? So when you change your smoke alarm batteries, go out and make it a habit to change the irrigation control box batteries. Consider low volume micro emitter sprinklers. That's something that doesn't require a lot. Maybe you have sprinklers that are high water users. You can go in and put these micro emitter sprinklers in and look for savings. And I looked at, do any of you guys know, I was quickly before I came here looking for the city of Ripon. I know Stockton has 6 or so rebates right now that are related to water. Does anybody know, does Ripon have Are you guys MID? Is that who or who's your irrigation district? SSJID. Okay, San Joaquin. Occasionally, they might get federal money to give back to the residents where they can provide a rebate on low-flow toilets or smart irrigation controllers. So right now, Cal Water, I think it is, in Stockton, had one for irrigation controllers. So if you went and purchased a smart irrigation controller, I want to say it was like a $125 rebate that you got back from purchasing this type of system. So just always keep your eyes and ears open for potential rebates related to irrigation and water conservation. And the can test. This is something that you can go out and do if you have cats or if you like a lot of tuna. Keep your cans and go out, and when you have enough of them, you place them on the lawn in this strategic pattern. Turn your sprinklers on for about 20 minutes and then turn them off and measure the cans. See how much water was in each can. And you can time that number by 3 to get to 60 minutes or 1 hour, and you can figure out what your output is on those sprinklers for an hour. And you'd be amazed to find out that this section, and maybe you might actually be able to tell if you have this section looks a little more dead of lawn than over here is nice and lush and green and taller, and this section's shorter and doesn't look quite as healthy. It's most likely a sprinkler output issue, but that's again a maintenance problem that you can easily correct and save a lot of money where we're not overwatering to compensate for what's being underwatered. So here is our sprinkler irrigation section of our website. And again, there's more information down at the bottom of the page, but lots of information that you can go home and look up related to sprinklers alone in your home. It also includes the links to the lawn irrigation scheduling and the can test, so more written directions of how to perform or do the can test at home, which are all part of that Healthy Lawns UCIPM website. So we make it easy to find. We talked about this, so I won't talk about it long, but reducing the weeds. Get the weeds out because they compete for water. And weeds can be very obnoxious and can overpower the plants that you want in your garden. And don't necessarily think of a weed as just knotweed or something, crabgrass or something like that. A weed is any unwanted plant. So just because it looks pretty, a bird may have dropped it. It may be a volunteer plant from your neighbor's yard. But if it's not something that you want in your landscape, it can be considered a weed. And you shouldn't feel guilty for having to keep it alive and water it if it's not something that you want in your landscape. So pull it out, get rid of it so that we're not keeping it alive by watering it. Deadheading your flowers. This will also help conserve a little bit of water, but every little bit helps. So just go out and don't wait for the flowers to fall off on their own, but go out with your hand pruners and clip those off. It'll put extra energy into the plant producing more flowers, growing, and we're not trying to keep these flowers alive that are spent and either going to seed or that have just died off on the plant. Stop fertilizing. So fertilizing encourages growth. So we add nitrogen to our plants grow. Growing plants need more water. So if we back off on the fertilizer that we're applying to our ornamental plants, even to our lawn, again, if we're grass cycling, we're providing nitrogen to the lawn naturally. And fertilizers encourage growth. Fertilizers also can lead to salt buildup. So if we're reducing the amount of water that we're applying to our plants, but we're still fertilizing our Miracle-Gro or whatever it is that we're applying to our citrus, to our roses, the fertilizers that normally would be watered into the soil are just sitting there, and that excess salt can be toxic to our plants as well. So not only does it help conserve water, but it can help with the salinity issues in your soil. 30 to 60% of fresh water is used for watering lawns. And again, that depends on the city, and that's from the EPA. So less lawn or no lawn does not necessarily equal an ugly yard. It does not, and we don't necessarily need this either. This might be a little extreme, having this much turf. So many people, when they think of no lawns, this is what we were talking about the White River Rock or the Dust Bowl looking vacant lot. And here's just some inspiring photos. Whether the city of Ripon is able to provide money for a Cash for Grass type program or not, If this is really something you want to do, whether the money's there or not, you're going to do it. The money part is a nice incentive, but if you're wanting to conserve water, it reduces the amount of physical labor you have to put into mowing your lawn, again, cost and fertilizers and things like that. But these are all lovely looking landscapes that don't have any turf or have very little turf. So you can see they took out 2/3 of their lawn, left just a little bit for the kids or the grandkids to play on, and converted it to natives possibly or low water users. Well, they have mulch. This one has rocks. That wouldn't be my first pick, but the wood chip mulch. So there are pros and there are cons. We talked about, we didn't talk about beneficials. So many times these flowery plants that people put in instead of turf attract your pollinators, your bees, your hummingbirds and butterflies. Using less pesticides, herbicides, because we're not having as many problems that we typically have with turf. Cons, again, we talked about this, any newly planted plants all require water to become established. And again, if you have kids or pets that use a lawn area, you might not want to rip it all out. And you might have a little more work, physical labor, in keeping the weeds out. So we're talking about you can stop watering, scalp your lawn, round up it, and in that transition process of getting your plants planted, you're really going to have to be aggressive of staying out there and keeping the turf from coming back in, maybe by sheet mulching. We were talking about using cardboard or newspaper, and just get out there, stay on top of the weeds before they go to seed and before those weeds take over the desirable plants that you have. And once they are grown in and they look like this, the weeds aren't as big of an issue because they aren't going to compete for this space. They can't compete. There's a couple different ways to remove turf. We just had a master gardener that put her husband to work last weekend with a sod cutter that they rented, and he looked like he was riding a bucking bronco out in his front yard. That thing had him all over the place, but it worked. You can solarize, which is using plastic in the hotter months, July, August, and the beginning of September, to basically cook the ground. You'd stop watering ahead of time, and the plastic just acts as this giant oven to kill weed seeds and turf seeds. The sheet mulching we talked about, and then herbicides. You can use Roundup and things like that to help get rid of your lawn. Again, this kind of goes in line with the fertilizing. Avoid heavy pruning. So let the shrubs be overgrown. We don't need to. Our mow and blow guys were at my office today, and I just wanted to go out and let the shrubs be. Let them look natural. They don't need to look like cubes and spheres and brick walls. Cutting them with their hedge clippers. The more you prune, the more growth you're going to potentially encourage, which again requires water. So cut back on your fertilizing, cut back on your pruning as well, and that will help conserve water. And this is a little excessive, but just an idea of get it through to you guys that no pruning is necessary. Use a broom. This is a real simple one that we can all do. Instead of going out and hosing off the patio, the leaves, the dust, spend a little extra time, put the grandkids to work, the kids to work, and give them a broom and use a push broom to get rid of things. And it's estimated that the hose can use up to 10 gallons of water a minute when we're out just spraying the sidewalk down, or even washing the car. That's how much water potentially we can be wasting. So a little muscle work doesn't hurt anybody. And when we do get water, if there's ways that you can recycle it, that is great. We have a master gardener who was able to get a hold of these really large barrels from his son, and he uses them to catch rain off of his garden shed. So he has his rain gutters go into these, and he has 4,000 gallons right now of water. Even though it seemed like we didn't get any water this winter off of his rooftops, he has 4,000 gallons of water that he's using currently to irrigate his ornamental plants in his landscape. And that's just from one rooftop. Lots of barrels, and they're very large barrels, so that might not be realistic to what you can get, but it's easy to do. With this rain now, if you can put some buckets out, that could be used later in the week to go water the patio plants or to water the shrubs. Any little bit helps that we can catch and recycle. And if you're in the kitchen, coffee water can be used to water plants, and the coffee grounds in the water that have gone through the coffee making process. Coffee water has nutrients for your plants, is what I'm trying to say. So you can either dilute it or you can pour it directly onto your plants, and it's a little extra nitrogen for those plants. Vegetables, say you boil something for dinner, instead of pouring that water down the drain, go pour it out in the garden. So we do have more resources, and again, our website is on our business card in the back, and there's master gardeners, like I said at the beginning, that are available to answer any gardening questions that you might have Monday through Thursday, 9 to noon. So with that, this is just a sneak peek of what our website looks like, our water conservation website. Do you guys have any questions? Yes. Desalinization, is that what you're? No, I haven't. That's not something that we would deal with on a homeowner level. The university is doing lots of research on desalinization plants, and especially down in Southern California, UC Riverside, they're looking into that a lot. But no, I don't. No, they're researching it. I mean, they're looking into that being the potential in the future. They're not, It's very cost prohibitive. Yeah, it's very costly, but it's not something up here in the valley that we're looking at, that we're doing the research on, and it's not something that as master gardeners here in the valley that we're dealing with homeowners on a homeowner level. But they're looking into it. If you just look up desalinization and maybe put UC after it, it'll bring up any UC related research on that topic. Mm-hmm. That's why you pay $900 for your ticket. So you have water to drink. Any other questions that you guys may have? Water or non-water related? We might this September. So this September's our Smart Gardening Conference, and we're currently working on our topics right now for our breakout sessions for that. And so I do have a master gardener that's working on a display board on gray water, but we haven't put together an actual workshop yet that we have a date set to, because there are so many regulations with code enforcement and things. What the gray water cannot be used on any edible plants. So we just have to be careful what we teach people so that they don't go out and they said I can water my plants with it, so they're out watering your tomatoes, and which is a no-no. So, but it is a topic. From the house, other than it's correct. Kitchen sinks, washing machines, things like that. That's gray water. Like if you have the shower water running and you catch like buckets or something, you can take that and use that out in the garden. Yeah, that's a white water. That's a fresh water. Yeah, you can take that out and use it. That you could use on edibles. It's the gray water that's gone down the drain, and instead of going out, goes into a catchment system. That we don't want to use because it's mixed with your washing machine water that might have sulfides and different things from the soaps, and which would be okay to water other plants, but not plants that you're going to eat. That's a good question, and I would say no though, because you still have the washing machine water that has soap residue and things like that you don't want to put directly on the plants. And there's lots of legal jargon that explain gray water on the California Department of Water Resources Board that says what you can and what you cannot use it for. So I would imagine even with a water softener, that's a no. Oh, well, there you go. You've got a resource right here that correct. Right. I grew up drinking well water and I'm still alive, but some people ship in water because they can't stand well water. So, and doesn't bother me. So I think it's all a taste preference. Any other garden related questions or water? What are you guys doing besides the 15 that I briefly talked about tonight. Anybody else doing any other conservation tips or have any other conservation tips to share? No? Ripping out lawn. Mm-hmm. Right. You can mulch. You can actually you top dress it with compost as well. You can. Water or not water related, that you guys realize that we're a resource that's here. We're available to answer questions, to help with projects. So if you have any community service projects that you're looking for guidance or tips and questions on, we're here to help with community gardens, school gardens, all types of things. So make sure you call us, and we're here to help. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, you guys, very much.